Chapter 31. Dunsmith stared at Klein with his gray eyes for a full minute without a word. Klein did not cower under the pressure of the silence and his gaze. He continued, locking his eyes with Dun. You must understand that once you consume the potion, there will be no room for regret. Finally, Dun spoke again in a deep, emotionless voice. Klein grinned and said, I know, but I respect the voice in me. First, Sleepless does not meet my requirements. It was the same for Spectator, which he heard from the Tarot Club. Based on description, he was unsure when he would come into contact with other Beyonder pathways. A slow remedy could not work for an urgent situation, therefore there was no need for him to wait. By the same logic, Corpse Collector was eliminated as well, leaving the two choices Mystery Prior and Seer, under the premise that potions of the same sequence were equally dangerous and him unable to obtain more information, as well as the fact that both Mystery Prior and Seer met his requirements. Then, regardless of whether Emperor Roselle was making a passing remark or if he really regretted not choosing Apprentice, Marauder, and Seer, it was enough to tip the balance in his heart. Furthermore, he could tell from the diary that as long as he figured out the true essence of digestion and acting, he would be able to avoid the negative effects the potion would bring to a significant extent. As for the murmurings and illusory enticements that could drive people to corruption and madness, he had already encountered that even without being a Beyonder. All right, Dun stood up and picked up his half-top hat. As he put it on, he said, Follow me down. Klein nodded and gave a gentleman's bow in gratitude. Tap, 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 both of them ventured down, their footsteps echoing through the silent and vast stairwell and passageway. Klein suddenly felt gripped by anxiety as he tried to find a topic of conversation. Captain, you mentioned that taking the potion would not directly give me the corresponding knowledge on mysticism, that I'll only have the qualifications to learn it. Then where does the basic knowledge of mysticism come from? Did our predecessors risk their life for it or obtain it via other means? Every time he went underground, he would find the air especially fresh. Clearly, the ventilation was excellent. However, the occasional gust of wind made one shiver. Dun glanced at him, the darkness in his gray eyes appearing abnormally deep. He answered calmly, One of them is, as you said, experimentation, summarization, and enhancement. Second, being bestowed by the gods. Third, the dangerous murmurs that others can't hear do not only growl and roar senselessly, at times they will describe some matters regarding mysticism, but according to what I know, people who truly listen to the murmurs on a long-term basis have gone mad without exception, or they would fall to corruption and become monsters. Of course, we must thank them. The notebooks they've left behind are precious treasures in the field of mysticism. Human lab rats, the underground passage's cold humidity made Klein shudder suddenly. Then would my luck enhancement ritual, which turned into social network magic, eventually lead to similar effects due to the crazy and horrible murmurs? At the intersection, Dun did not proceed toward Cheney's Gate, nor did he turn to the weapons, materials, and archives. Instead, he took Klein to the left and approached St. Selena Cathedral. Midway, he stopped. It was unclear what he touched to open a secret door. This is our Nighthawk team's alchemy room. I will get old Neil to retrieve the Seer potion formula and the corresponding materials from inside Cheney's Gate. Hey, you have pretty good luck. The goddess has blessed you with her favor. We should still have the materials needed for 2 Seer potions. If not, you would have to wait a long while. Dun pointed at the room behind the door. Wait in here. Later, watch old Neil concoct the potion. It's the most basic part of mysticism studies. Oh, do not randomly touch things in there. They are either very dangerous, expensive, or both. With that said, Dun added like before, oh right, I forgot something again. Your becoming a Beyonder is a result of you having to face danger and the need to find the notebook. The meritorious deed was only a part of it. Therefore, you will not be a member of our team for the time being. You will still be a civilian staff member with a corresponding salary. You will still do what I instructed you to do previously. One additional thing is to learn more about mysticism with old Neil. You can arrange the time with him, all right. Other than feeling a little disgruntled by the lack of a pay rise, Klein was in full agreement with the rest. According to Dun, there was still the process of learning and grasping one's newfound powers after consuming the potion. If he were to become a formal member immediately and participate in paranormal missions, his death was certain. Dun turned around and walked 2 steps towards the intersection when he suddenly turned back. Another thing, I knew it. Klein was already used to the style of his captain. We got something out of the Secret Order's actions, said Dun with his usual expression. It's unlikely they will provoke you in the near future, but don't be careless. It has to do with them being temporarily unable to confirm whether the Antigonus family's notebook is important to them. From what we discovered, They have preserved some of the ancient customs, and we can confirm that they are related to the Solomon Empire and the corrupted nobles of that period. Got it. Thanks, Captain, said Klein as he exhaled. This was also one of the reasons why he did not wish to wait, grasping the chance of becoming a Beyonder in such a hurry. As he watched Dunn leave and confirmed that he would not turn his head to say more, Klein slowly walked into the alchemy room. The room had long tables. There were test tubes, pipettes, scales, and crucibles. It resembled a chemistry laboratory from his previous life. It was just more Spartan and ancient. Other than that, there was a huge cauldron, a dark wood ladle, a translucent crystal ball, and other items. The dark sacred emblem and other strange emblems were visible everywhere. They gave the room a tint of mystery. Klein looked around with interest, but he was not stupid enough to touch the things. After a while, he heard footsteps. Old Neil carried a tiny silver chest with complicated patterns. He was still wearing his unique classic black robe that seemed anachronistic, matched with a felt hat with a rounded edge of the same color. Lad, I never expected you to choose seer. Old Neil put down the chest and used his somewhat turbid red eyes size up Klein. Your personality is just like mine when I was young. You just don't want to follow the masses. Not bad. Light these few gas lamps and close the door. All right. Klein tried hard not to tremble as he lit each gas lamp in the alchemy room. He made dim light rule over the place once again. Tack. 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 The secret door was closed. He turned back to see the white-haired and deep-wrinkled Old Neil using a bunch of strange tied tree branches to scrub the black cauldron. The concoction of a sequence potion is extremely simple, at least for sequence 7 and below. There's no need for a special flame or any additional ritual, much less an incantation. There's no need for one to participate in it spiritually. All one needs to do is go according to the formula's steps, add the precise amounts, and mix it. That will be all. Old Neil's wrinkles seemed to bloom from his smile. For real? Klein questioned in surprise. This sounds as simple as my luck enhancement ritual. Man, it's quite frightening when you come to think of it. Perhaps it's a gift of the gods, praised the lady. Old Neil drew a haphazard circle over his chest. Following that, he opened the silver chest and pulled out goatskin parchment that exuded antiquity. The yellowish-brown goatskin unfurled inch by inch, revealing words on it. Klein looked from a distance and realized it was in Hermes, a language he was very familiar with. It was written in ink that resembled blood, seeming to still having its fluidity intact, but other than that, it did not seem extraordinary in any way. Seer, 100 milliliters of pure water, 13 drops of night vanilla liquids, 7 gold mint leaves. Klein silently recited the formula's content, but the rest of it was blocked by Old Neil's wrist, preventing him from reading it. Pure water is water that is repeatedly distilled. Thankfully, I made some previously, so there's no need to waste time on it. While Old Neil gave the introduction, he took a large sealed glass bottle from the table with great familiarity. He took off the stopper and poured about 100 milliliters of pure water into the cauldron without much thought. Klein did not dare ask, afraid he would affect Old Neil's concoction. After all, he was the one drinking the potion. 13 drops of night vanilla juices. This can be extracted and stored as an essential oil ahead of time. Old Neil took out a tiny brown bottle from the silver chest and with a pipette and dripped 13 drops into the cauldron in a relaxed manner. A faint but easing fragrance emanated, making Klein feel an abnormal sense of peace. 7 gold mint leaves. Old Neil picked up a silver patterned can and removed its lid. With his bare hands, he picked up a few leaves and scattered it into the cauldron. He caught a whiff of a fresh and stimulating scent. 4, 5, 6, 7, perfect. Old Neil chuckled and looked at the potion formula on the goatskin. 3 drops of poison hemlock. This isn't something you should drink randomly. It can cause your entire body to numb to the point of death. In ancient times, it proved to be the best option for committing suicide. It's not like him, silly, Klein lampooned. Old Neil changed pipettes and dripped the poison hemlock into the cauldron. The mixture caused a strange smell that freshened one's mind. 9 grams of dragon blood grass powder. Old Neil took his time to reach his hand into the silver chest and pulled out a transparent test tube. There was some deep black powder inside. He used a beaker and a scale to measure 9 grams of powder and poured it into the cauldron. He then stirred the mixture twice with the dark wood ladle. The laid-back process to making the concoction made Klein a little worried. In fact, the materials from before were just supplemental. The exact amount doesn't really affect the final outcome. Should I put a little bit more? Old Neil made a joke. The last 2 is what's crucial. The amount can be slightly lowered, but it cannot be too far from the requirement, or your enhancement can fail. Oh, the quantity cannot be any more, even just by a bit. If so, You will have to be treated for mental problems. It's not impossible to die immediately. Klein immediately tensed up as he saw old Neil pull out a black glass bottle from the silver chest. Lavos squid's blood, 10 milliliters. This kind of squid is considered an extraordinary biological species. It is clearly mutated. It is covered in mystery. Its blood will rapidly break down under sunlight and lose its unique qualities. It has to be stored in opaque material. Old Neil's tone no longer sounded relaxed. He quickly and carefully retrieved 10 milliliters of blood with a test tube. The blood was blue like the sky. From time to time, it produced illusory bubbles as though it was connected to the spiritual world. After pouring the blood inside the test tube, the remaining drops are ignored as a form of precaution, whispered old Neil. The moment the blue blood entered the cauldron and made contact with the liquid from before, it produced bubbling sounds. The surrounding light was dyed with a light blue tinge, making Klein feel a strange sense of distance but also familiarity. It felt like the feeling of being in a mother's womb. It elevated a human soul. The final item, stellar aqua crystal, 50 grams. Old Neil's voice sounded in Klein's ears, jolting him awake as he looked at the table. In the old gentleman's hand was a piece of extremely pure crystal. Furthermore, the crystal appeared gelatinous, as though it was jelly from Earth. It lacked hardness under the blue light's illumination. It reflected bits of light as it seemed to contain a resplendent void of stars within. This is excellent material for the creation of divination crystals, just a little less in consideration of any mistakes. As old Neil measured, he used a tiny patterned silver blade to extract the crystal. Pure water, night vanilla, gold mint leaves, poison hemlock juice, dragon blood grass, Lavos squid blood, and stellar aqua crystal make up a seer. At that moment, Klein could not help but recall the formula. With everything done, old Neil poured in a few blocks of stellar aqua crystal into the cauldron. Sizzle. Illusory fog instantly spewed forth, turning the alchemy room into a blur. Klein seemed to see a vast array of stars amid the fog and felt like he was being observed by an invisible existence. A few seconds later, the fog dissipated. Old Neil used the dark wood ladle and scooped out some sticky dark blue liquid. It had strange characteristics, gooey and inseparable. Not one bit was left in the black cauldron. The dark blue liquid was poured into an opaque cup before old Neil pointed at it. It's done, your seer potion. Chapter 32. Klein looked at dark blue gelatinous liquid, finding it hard to describe it as either a block or cup of liquid. He swallowed his saliva and said in great difficulty, "Am I to drink it just like that? Is there no need for any other preparations? Like a ritual, an incantation, or a prayer?" Old Neil acknowledged tersely before saying, "Preparation? There is. Get a cup of Intis Ormer grape wine, suck on a Desi cigar, then whistle a relaxing tune and dance a upbeat court dance. You can do a tap dance if you prefer that. Finally, play a round of Gwent cards." When he saw Klein's expression turn dumbfounded, old Neil laughed and summarized what he had just said. "If you feel nervous, you are quite humorous, aren't you?" The corners of Klein's mouth twitched as he resisted the urge to draw his gun. He put his cane down and extended his right hand as though he held something heavy. He raised the opaque cup. The smell of the potion was faint and seemingly ethereal. "Lad, do not hesitate. The more you hesitate, the more nervous and afraid you will be. That will only affect the absorption that follows," said old Neil with his back facing Klein. It was as though he had said it casually. It was unknown. When he arrived by the nearby water basin, he turned on the tap and washed his hands. Klein nodded silently and took a deep breath. Just like he was back when he was a child, he pinched his nose and drank it like medicine. He moved the opaque cup to his mouth and tipped his head, drinking it down with a gulp. A cool and smooth feeling quickly filled his oral cavity. It then flowed through his gullet and into his stomach. The sticky, dark blue liquid seemed to grow out thin and long tentacles, bringing stimulation and coldness to every cell in Klein's body. He could not help but convulse as his vision rapidly went into a blur. All colors seemed to saturate. The reds were redder, the blues were bluer, and the blacks were blacker. The rich colors blended like an impressionist painting. Klein had seen such a scene before. It was back when he was questioned by the spirit medium daily. At that moment, his vision became a blur, and although his mind felt light, it was clear. He felt like a castaway floating in the sea. Slowly, his surroundings turned discernible. All the colors returned to their original as a grayish and blurry fog emanated. Around him were bodies he found difficult to describe. There were transparent objects that did not seem to exist. Deep down, there were clean light clusters of different colors. The light seemed to possess life or contain immense knowledge. This is a little similar to what I saw during the luck enhancement ritual. As Klein instinctively looked down, he realized that he was still standing in his original spot, body convulsing. Suddenly, he came to a realization, causing his consciousness to sink abruptly and fuse with him, boom. The fog quickly dissipated as the colors restored to normal, the bright, clear halo and the inexistent objects instantly vanished. The scene in the alchemy room returned to normal, but Klein felt his head swell, he felt like it was being yanked apart. Whatever he saw had countless afterimages, his ears were overwhelmed by an ethereal murmur, Hernasis, Phlegria, Hernasis, Phlegria, Hernasis, Phlegria. Klein felt a stabbing pain at his forehead as he quickly had thoughts of causing destruction to vent the discomfort in him. He frowned and hurriedly shook his head. Is your vision abnormal? Are you also hearing things you did not use to hear? Said old Neil at his side with a concealed smile. Yes, Mr. Neil, what should I do? Klein tolerated the intense mania and asked. Old Neil chuckled. This is the resulting seepage of the potion's energy. You lack the means to control it, all right. Do as I say, think of an object in your mind, something common, make it simple and easy. Klein quickly focused as he envisaged his own top hat woven from black silk. He recalled the feeling when he touched it and its exact shape. Place all your focus on it. Keep repeating that while creating the outlines. Does it feel a little better? Old Neil's voice penetrated into his mind like a serene song. Klein turned his focus bit by bit to the imagined top hat. He felt the murmurs subside into a whisper before they vanished. The afterimages he saw also stacked upon one another and no longer appeared a blur. Much better, said Klein after calming his mind of chaotic emotions and having exhaled. He looked down at his body and discovered that nothing abnormal had happened. He moved his limbs and with half anticipation and half doubt, asking, I succeeded? Am now considered a seer? Old Neil pulled out a mirror-like mercury plate and shoved it in front of him. Look at your eyes. Klein focused his gaze and saw that he was wearing a black top hat. His outline stood out and his facial features looked normal, apart from having his face covered in sweat. He did not seem different in any way. He followed old Neil's instruction and carefully looked at his eyes. Only then did he discover that his brown eyes had deepened quite significantly. It was so much deepened that it was like the night one in complete darkness. It felt so deep that it could absorb the souls of others. Normally, dark brown pupils are easily recognized as black, without looking very carefully. Even Klein himself would not have noticed. This is a physical manifestation of the potion's powers. When you learn cogitation and how to converge your power, your eyes will return to normal. Old Neil smiled as he reached out his right hand. Congratulations, our new Beyonder. Our seer, thank you. Klein reached out his hand and shook it. Mr. Neil, when can I learn how to cogitate? You can learn it now. The initial steps of cogitation is relatively simple. It's even more so for Beyonders, said old Neil with a smile. Just now, producing an object in your mind to divert your attention and turning the energy seepage inwards is actually the first step to cogitation. Try doing it again. Klein closed his eyes and once again, his mind depicted the top hat. His concentration seemed to be more easily focused than before. Soon, random thoughts that surfaced would quickly vanish, leaving the hat's outline. Let your brain go somewhat blank. Exchange the object you imagined. Use something that does not exist in this world. An object you imagine completely out of thin air. You have to follow this rule. Only by doing so can you enter cogitation. Only then can you exceed the concept of I. The limitless I will become one with the universe, giving you the ability to see and understand the truth. You will obtain knowledge only you yourself can understand. In the domain of mysticism studies, it's called a mystic experience, said old Neil using a pacifying tone. You just need to listen to the descriptions that I'll get to later. What's most important is to enter cogitation, something that doesn't exist in this world. Imagine something completely out of thin air. Would things from Earth count? Klein attempted using an earthy green intercontinental missile he saw on television. He replaced the top hat with this long and thick missile. However, regardless of how he outlined it or imagined it, he ultimately only ended up focusing his attention. It doesn't seem like it will work. Klein had no choice but to let his imagination run wild. He outlined a sphere of light and then many similar objects, gathering them together. The spheres of light stacked upon one another. It felt like an object of fantasy. Klein's thoughts gradually turned ethereal and afloat. His body and mind calmed down. The objects that did not seem to exist, the fog with the bright clusters of light and the complex colors appeared once again. They floated in the sky in close reach. He extended his spirituality inch by inch as he looked down at them quietly. He sensed it and took it in. Very good, as expected of a seer. You entered cogitation very smoothly. You were just slightly worse than me back then. Slightly, said old Neil with a chuckle. In that case, I'll begin teaching you the most common, easiest to grasp, and most useful ability in the future in mysticism, spirit vision. He switched off the gas lamps one after another but opened the door to the alchemy room. It made the spot where Klein was dark, but not to the point of failing to make out silhouettes of objects. All right, in your present state. Raise your hands and place them in front of your eyes. Your index fingers need to face each other, but they are not to touch. Open your eyes and keep them open until you are accustomed to the darkness. Klein completed each step according to Old Neil's description. He saw the silhouettes of his fingers and the surrounding objects. Actually, you should be lying down to let your body be entirely relaxed, but since the effect of your cogitation is not bad, let's continue. Old Neil laughed. Focus your gaze on a spot behind your hands. It has to be behind. Then, slowly move your fingers and maintain the same pose without touching them. Also, do not pull them out of your sight. Klein calmly listened to it and cast his gaze at an empty spot behind his palms. He then slowly moved his index fingers within his vision. Once, twice, thrice. Suddenly, Klein saw a fiery red color in between his fingers. He let out a sound. You see color? That's right, that's the initial step to spirit vision. The color you see is your aura, said Old Neil with a chuckle. No rush, do it a few more times. After stabilizing it, look elsewhere. They'll also take this opportunity to explain to you the different meanings of the different colors. All right, Klein moved his fingers back and forth while having his vision trained on the fiery red. Old Neil thought for a moment before saying, to put it simply, the mainstream way of mysticism is to split non-physical parts of a human into 4 levels. At its core is the spirit body, which is also everyone's basic spirituality. There is a school of thought that believes all biological creatures have spirituality and have a spirit body. I'm not sure about anything else, but to mystery priors, the goal of cogitation and the method to increase our strength is directed toward the spirit body. Outside the spirit body is the astral projection. It is the means for the spirit body to communicate with the spirit world and with stellar space. It's considered an external manifestation of the spirit body. Besides, it will be directly related to your personal ambition and your prevailing emotions. The scenes you see after consuming the potion are scenes your astral projection sees when it wanders through the spirit world. That world does not obey the laws of the physical world. It involves exceeding the concept of I, the limitless I, and the universe's I. The past, present, and future might be stacked upon one another, and that is the source of divination. In the spirit world, what you see is just an imagery, a symbol. You have to interpret it to understand its actual meaning. Divination and many magic spells are cast through the astral projection. Do not mistake its relationship and differences with the spirit body. One is just a body and the other is for form. Klein continued looking at the aura in between his fingertips and made the simple conclusion. Further out will be the body of heart and mind. From this point forth, it will combine with the physical body. It involves your brain and is an overall manifestation of your inferential abilities, your analytical abilities, your observational abilities, and identification abilities. Some potions will mainly raise this. Quite a number of magic spells target it as well. Old Neil explained in relatively great detail. The outermost layer is the ether body. It is a manifestation of your vital energies and physical form. The aura color you see is an external phenomenon of your ether body. In other words, apart from the spiritual bodies, ghosts, and specters you can see directly with spirit vision. It might also include certain existences that should not be seen. You can also see the ether bodies of others or their auras. From their thickness, brightness, and color, you can determine their health and emotional state. When your spirit vision improves and you grasp more mysticism knowledge, you will be able to discover even more details. You can even determine the lifespan of others. By the way, the emotional state I mentioned would also manifest itself because of your astral projection. When you go higher in sequence, your spirit vision will reach a relatively high stage. You can even be able to see someone else's astral projection. That way you will learn even more things. This is a level only seers and mystery priors can attain. Some fellows even claim that the strongest form of spirit vision allows one to see anything in any place, including the past and future. However, I'm skeptical about it. It sounds quite powerful. Klein was almost turning eager. Old Neil coughed and continued. Let's return to the ether body and the colors of the auras. Your limbs and parts that are required in motion will appear red. Your head and brain surface will appear as purple. Spots that excrete waste will appear orange. The digestion system will appear as yellow. The heart and other regulatory systems will appear green. Your throat and other parts of the nervous system will appear blue. An entirely balanced body will make a body be cloaked in white. That is a symbol of health. Once it turns dark or the thickness thins, the color will change. That indicates that the corresponding spot has turned problematic. It means it's in a state of exhaustion or illness. In addition, The inner layer of the astral projection represents prevailing emotions. Red means passion and excitement. Orange means warmth and satisfaction. Yellow means happiness and extroversion. Green means calm and peace. Blue means coldness and stillness, that one is in thought. White means brightness and eagerness to improve. Dark colors mean worry, sorrow, and silence. Purple means that spirituality is taking control of the lead, coldness and estrangement. Klein silently memorized the information and stabilized his initial spirit vision. Good, you can look at other objects. Old Neil did not speak further as he nodded. Klein slowly turned his head and looked at Old Neil. Indeed, he saw different colors in different parts of his body. The aura was both thick and thin at different spots. The purple color at his head was brightest and his limbs' redness was relatively dark. The overall whiteness to his body was somewhat faded as well. Indeed, he's getting on in age. Klein made a silent comment to himself. Only with what he saw did he feel that he had become a beyonder. I am now a beyonder. He shifted his gaze and carefully sized up Old Neil when suddenly he saw a translucent pair of cold and ruthless eyes without any brows in the void behind him. This nearly illusory eyes were staring at Old Neil intently, as well as him. This. Klein shuddered as he gaped and said, "You have a pair of eyes behind you." Old Neil was taken aback before he forced a smile. Ignore them. Chapter 33. The moment Old Neil finished his sentence, the illusory pair of eyes that lurked in the darkness behind him vanished, even in his spirit vision state. Klein was no longer able to identify traces of its existence. This is a characteristic of ritualistic magic, explained Old Neil with a chuckle. Fascinating. Is spirit vision an enhanced version of yin-yang eyes? Klein felt like a child who had received a new toy. In excitement, he turned his gaze away and began observing every corner of the room. He wanted to see the differences of the alchemy room with and without the spirit vision. The outlines of the objects in the dark, such as the tables, test tubes, scales, cups, and cupboards, did not look different from how it looked like without spirit vision. They did not emit any lights or colors. Objects without lives do not have any spirituality. Klein mumbled to himself as he swept his gaze toward the silver chest. Suddenly, he saw a vibrancy of colors. The colors were as blue as the sky, as resplendent as the stars, or as crimson red as burning flames. Materials from extraordinary beings still have some life in them, and, are still active, even if the source is already dead. Klein deliberated on his words as he sought Old Neil's help. A precise description is that they have remnant spiritualities. It is one of the crucial points of a successful potion concoction. It is also one of the reasons why a beyonder will lose control. Dunn should have already informed you, explained Old Neil frankly. He suddenly laughed, having recalled something. I remember that the formula of Corpse Collector requires a desiccated mature black-spotted frog. To consume that potion requires a lot of courage. Klein imagined a little and found it disgusting. He did not echo Old Neil's words and turned his gaze to a dark area. However, there were no spiritual bodies or ghosts that he looked forward to seeing. Isn't it said that the world of spirits is everywhere? He asked out of curiosity. Old Neil chuckled tersely before saying, Punk, repeat after me. This is the headquarters of a Nighthawk squad. This is the ground beneath the church of the Evernight goddess. There are many beyonders in here. Do you think we will allow spirits and souls to wander around in here? Furthermore, the spiritual world and spirit are two different concepts. Klein felt a little embarrassed as he turned his head, pretending to look at the faint light from the gas lamps at the entrance. I get it. While speaking, the area between his brows began to spasm. What's happening? Just as Klein turned around to ask, he suddenly saw a figure standing quietly by the door at the periphery of the light. It appeared human, though its aura's colors and the darkness blended perfectly, making it impossible to discern. Klein felt a painful spasm at his glabella 1. His vision turned chaotic as he focused his attention again, but there was no formless figure. Strange. He turned around and asked, Mr. Neil, the spot in between my brows is a little painful from spasms. Haha, this is very common. You are a new beyonder. Spirit vision places a great burden on your spirit body. Furthermore, it drains you constantly. Physical effects can be glabella spasms, headaches, oversensitivity, and minor bouts of hallucinations. And while viewing things with spirit vision, it's very easy to feel uncomfortable as a result of the unfamiliar surroundings. It's also very easy to have your emotions affected by others. These are things that require you to pay attention. You can become accustomed to and eliminate them with repeated practice. In addition, use it sparingly and end it in a timely fashion," answered old Neil with a smile. "Why does it feel like you are delighted by this?" Klein hurriedly asked for advice. Then, how do I exit from the state of having spirit vision? He had planned on mentioning the invisible figure he had seen, though when he heard of the minor bouts of hallucination among the symptoms, he struck that thought away from the glabella spasm and headache. He could completely guess old Neil's answer. Like before, think of an item to divert your attention. It will bring you out of cogitation. Close your eyes and control your spirituality and repeatedly tell it to end. When you open your eyes again, you will discover that your spirit vision has ended, old Neil described leisurely, and when he was done, added, "Of course, that is the most trivial and clumsy method. We can repeatedly hint to ourselves in cogitation from practice to affect our spirituality. That way, you will have a simple switch. For instance, tapping at your glabella twice lightly would allow you easily activate spirit vision. Another 2 taps will simply end it. As for how you set it up, it depends on your habits and preferences." Got it? Klein thought for a moment and planned to imitate old Neil to use tapping his glabella twice as a switch for his spirit vision. Tapping once was easily mistaken as an instinctive knock to his head, and tapping thrice could be a waste of valuable time in dangerous situations. As for actions like snapping fingers, they were too attention-drawing. He eased his focus and imagined the stacked spheres of light and re-entered a state of cogitation under old Neil's guidance. After repeated hints and practice, he finally set up his switch. He clenched his fist slightly and used his index finger's joint to tap at his glabella twice. Immediately, there were glowing auras of differing thickness and colors appearing before his eyes. After another 2 taps, everything returned to normal. "I finally grasped it," he sighed with delight. Only then did he realize how exhausted he was, feeling like he could fall asleep at any time. His mind hurt as though he had stayed up for 3 nights. Old Neil said with a chuckle, "We are not sleepless. Every practice and every time spirit vision is used excessively, you will need some sleep. You can now go back and have a good rest. In the afternoon, go to Iron Cross Street where Welch's place is and walk around. Try your best to find clues about the Antigonus family's notebook as soon as possible. Tomorrow, I'll continue teaching you about mysticism. Of course, do not forget to read the historical documents." All right, Klein was in full agreement with old Neil's arrangements. He picked up his cane and left the alchemy room. He watched the door close as old Neil returned to the armory. Klein massaged his glabella and temples and with the help of his cane, sauntered up the stairwell. At that moment, Duns Smith came from behind him with the corners of his lips hooked with a deep gaze. He said, "I heard from old Neil that you are a very suitable candidate. Even without cogitation, you were able to use spirit vision. Perhaps it's a unique trait of being a seer," replied Klein humbly. He guessed that Dunn had been watching the armory for old Neil. Dunn slowed down and went ahead of Klein a little. After a few seconds of silence, he turned around and said, "You have to remember that curiosity killed the cat. It can also kill beyonders. Do not attempt to probe the murmurings you should not be listening or see existences you should not see." All right, Klein knew this was another reminder of how beyonders lost control after entering Blackthorn's security company. He greeted Rose, and who obviously did not know that he had become a beyonder. He slowly walked out the door and reached the streets where he took a trackless carriage to Daffodil Street. He nearly fell asleep on his return journey. It was still in the morning and the temperature was about 26 degrees Celsius. Klein pulled out a copper key from his waistband and opened the door to his home. There were still many items missing from his home. The living room and dining hall were still empty. Benson and Melissa had work or school, so they had both left early in the morning. Klein did not have the capacity to bother with anything else. He closed the door and briskly went to the 2nd floor and entered the bookshelf-equipped bedroom that belonged to him. After taking off his tuxedo and hanging it on a clothing rack, he eagerly plunged into bed. The moment his head hit the pillow, he fell asleep. Klein was awoken by bright sunlight. He turned his head and slowly opened his eyes to discover the burning sun outside. What time is it? Did I miss the tarot club in the afternoon? He struggled to get up and walk to the clothing rack to take out his pocket watch from the pocket of the tuxedo's inner lining. Not only had he forgotten about the matter, he had forgotten to close the door to his bedroom and pulled the curtains to the oriel window. Klein pulled out the pocket watch and immediately felt relieved when he opened it. It was only slightly past noon. There was still a lot of time until the scheduled gathering at 3 in the afternoon. It was Monday, the day he would have a gathering with the Hanged Man and Justice. Klein went into thought as he tapped his glabella twice. The scene before him changed once again as he saw that his body had restored to a bright luster. He tapped twice again and stopped his spirit vision. Relaxed. He went to the first floor and boiled a kettle of water. He placed some inferior quality tea leaves and chewed on some rye bread dabbed in a little butter. Afterwards, Klein flipped through historical materials and original Klein's diary. He began revising and consolidating his knowledge. At 2:57 p.m., Klein closed his book and capped his fountain pen before pulling the curtains. Immediately following that, he locked the bedroom's door, making the room turn abnormally dark. He tapped his glabella twice and activated spirit vision to survey his surroundings. After confirming that there were no invisible spiritual bodies in his room, Klein stopped the spirit vision and took out his pocket watch to check the time. Tick-tock tick, tock 1 minute before 3. He opened up his pace and, like before, walked 4 steps in a counterclockwise manner in a squarish shape. He incanted in Chinese softly only this time. He did not prepare any staple food. Klein closed his eyes as he felt the back of his hands turn itchy. It felt like the 4 black dots forming a square was protruding and projecting something. Hysterical shouts and alluring murmurs began resounding, but Klein realized that the headache was not as bad as the first time. It was not that he was unaffected, but that he was doing his best to stop himself from listening as a beyonder. He had to have more self-control in such an environment soon. His body turned light as he floated up. He saw the grayish-white and blurry fog that emanated then. He saw dark red stars. 2 of them had a minuscule connection with him with an abnormal sense of familiarity. Klein looked at his blurry self and muttered in confusion. The astral projection that old Neil mentioned? He remained calm for a few seconds and again transformed the opulent divine palace with the tall bronze table under the domed ceiling, as well as the 22 high-back chairs that corresponded to the different constellations. Klein calmly walked to the seat of honor and made his body and face be immersed in thicker gray fog. He extended his right hand and tapped 2 familiar deep red stars and created a miraculous connection. Chapter 34. In an underground basement without any windows, the burly Alger Wilson sat by a long table with various apparatuses and goatskin parchments on it. In front of him was a half-consumed candle. The dim, yellowish flames flickering made the shadows of the objects and table move like a mirage. Alger's hair was disheveled like seaweed with a deep blue color that resembled black. He wore a robe with lightning patterns embroidered on it. He clasped his hands with his thumbs facing each other while he focused on a bottle of black liquid to the left of the candle. Whoosh, 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 splash, splash, splash. The sound of tempestuous winds or the crashing of the sea waves howled from inside the sealed bottle, and in spots where the black ink did not sink, a faint fog would swirl. It was as though it grew eyes and a mouth. Alger cocked his head to glance at the clock hanging on the wall and watched the needle strike 3. He pressed down on his temple as his eyes turned dark. Fascinating colors surfaced from the various items on the table at that moment. He discovered a deep red light appear like a tidal wave from nowhere, drowning him instantly. Backlund Empress Burrow, inside the Hall family's luxurious mansion, after dismissing her dance teacher. Audrey locked the door and sat straight up in front of her dressing table. The sun outside was bright and gorgeous. There was a light brown notebook made of exquisite goat skin. It was flipped open to reveal that it was blank. To its right was a fountain pen with a golden tip and embedded rubies. Audrey did a test and made sure that she could pick up the fountain pen and write down the formula the moment she left the gathering. "I'm so looking forward to it." She inhaled to repress her excited emotions as she looked at the mirror with puckered lips. However, she did not see it reflect herself. Instead, a dark red and illusory beam burst out from her body. Above the gray fog stood a majestic divine hall that looked like a giant's residence. Dark red colors bloomed on both sides of the bronze table. They surged upwards like a fountain before pattering down. It carved 2 blurry figures who sat in the same spots as before. Audrey, with her soft blonde hair and tall, slim build, instinctively looked towards the seat of honor. She saw the figure immersed in thick gray fog sitting back. One hand was flat, touching the table side, while the other hand was stroking his chin. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool," Audrey shouted with a cheery voice. Following that, she turned her head and looked at the person opposite her, with the same tone. She said, "Good afternoon, Mr. Hanged Man. This lady sure is unsophisticated. Is she so sure that I'm a good person? Why isn't there any fear from her? Is she a noble lady who has been protected well?" Klein smiled and maintained his unfathomable image. "Good afternoon, Miss Justice," as he spoke. He lowered his head slightly and moved his left hand and tapped his glabella twice. What he saw changed instantly. He saw justice and the hanged man emit the colors of their aura, and the surrounding gray fog and dark red stars remained the same. Nothing that seemingly did not exist or lustrous brilliances that possessed life was seen. He shifted his gaze and saw that Justice's aura perfectly matched the colors old Neil described. What was supposed to be red, purple, blue, or white were their respective colors. Furthermore, they maintained a lustrous brilliance and were of appropriate thickness. It was easy to tell that she was a vibrant young girl. The colors of her emotions are red and yellow. That's joy, zeal, and excitement. Klein made a judgment before casting his attention towards the hanged man like Justice. There was nothing special about the colors of the hanged man's aura. His emotions were blue mixed in with some orange, calm, thoughtful, careful, and a little pleased. With this being his first attempt, Klein made a conclusion without much confidence. Just as he shifted his gaze away, he suddenly realized something strange. The aura of the hanged man's innermost layer was nearly of the same color. Klein focused his mind and took another careful look. He could faintly see that deep within the hanged man's ether body was a deep blue. Akin to the sea, it felt like a tidal storm, his astral projection? Or should I say the surface of his astral projection? From the looks of it, he's really a beyonder, and one that's apparently stronger than old Neil. Klein analyzed as his mind was filled with questions. Not necessary. It might have to do with this being a unique environment. It's only because this is my home ground that I'm able to see these things that old Neil did not manifest. He turned his head toward Justice again and confirmed that it was a characteristic only beyonders possessed. At that moment, Alger also completed his greetings. Audrey drew a light gasp as she asked in anticipation, "Mr. Hanged Man, did you receive the box of ghost shark blood?" Alger took a look at Klein and saw him tapping his glabella as though he was considering other matters. "Thank you very much. It perfectly met my expectations. I never expected you to send it to me so quickly." "The ghost shark blood is not the typical extraordinary creature," said Alger frankly. Audrey smiled humbly and said, "I'm very happy to see this outcome." As she loved anything to do with mystery from a young age, she had befriended those in aristocratic circles with similar interests. They have exchanged information, books, and rare artifacts among each other. But before this, none of them had ever obtained any supernatural power to become a real beyonder. Instead, there were a few princes that hinted that they could gift them what they wanted if they became their princess consort. However, she had obtained the ghost shark blood directly from her family's vault. After all, the inventory only states one big bottle, without mentioning how many milliliters or how full it had to be. She believed that pouring a little bit of it would go unnoticed, even if there was an accident and the matter was exposed. Her parents were unlikely to pursue the matter. Alger looked deeply at the fool who was enveloped in fog before turning his head back with a smile. "According to our agreement, I will tell you the formula to the potion, spectator. Let me prepare myself, all right? Begin." Audrey inhaled as she focused her full attention. Low-sequence potions are very easy to concoct. Just follow the order that I provide you. Do remember that there can be smaller quantities of the ingredients, but not more. It would cause major problems. You should have heard about news of beyonders losing control. I believe there's no need for me to repeat it. Alger first mentioned things to take note of. Audrey nodded gently and said, "I understand completely." While she spoke, she turned her head to look at Mr. Fool. She wished to know if the mystery expert had anything to add. Unfortunately, the fool was sitting silently there like a statue. Alger thought for a moment before saying, "Having smaller quantities does not mean it should deviate by too much. If you do not have an assistant, I suggest you spend some time familiarizing yourself with chemistry experiment. I have a family tutor for such matters," answered Audrey without feeling the burden. After Alger mentioned the furthest extent of the deviation, he recited with great fluency, "Spectator, sequence 9 potion. 80 milliliters of pure water, 5 drops of autumn crocus essence, 13 grams of cow teeth peanol powder, 7 petals of elf flowers, a matured manhell fish's eyeball, and 35 milliliters of goat-horned blackfish blood." The final 2 items are the main ingredients. They are extraordinary creatures from the sea. You have to be careful. All right, Audrey recalled and repeated, 80 milliliters of pure water, 5 drops of autumn crocus essence, 13 grams of cow teeth peanol powder, reminded Alger with his help. Audrey gradually and precisely memorized the formula's order. However, she appeared worried as she mumbled it again and again. "Do you know about cogitation?" When Alger saw Justice nod, he continued, "I do not know how much you know about cogitation. Let me describe it once. After consuming the potion, quickly begin cogitation to control your spirituality and energy. Make sure to practice every day to truly grasp the powers of the potion, dig out the meaning it symbolizes and even more of its mysteries. That way you can avoid the danger of losing control to the greatest extent. And the meaning of a potion mainly lies in its name, such as spectator. Klein silently listened to the conversation and had no plans on interrupting. All he did was secretly memorize and study, but when he heard that, he suddenly had a thought. Audrey listened to the hanged man's explanations attentively. And just as she was about to inquire about something more detailed, she suddenly heard the rapping sound on the table. She and Alger turned their heads and looked at the fool. They realized that the mysterious and mighty figure was tapping gently with his fingers. He said in a deep voice, "It's not about grasping them, but rather digesting them. It's not about discovery, but rather acting. The name of a potion is not only symbolic, it's also imagery. It is the key to digesting." Audrey was dazed and confused from hearing that. She was not very clear on what Mr. Fool was trying to express. She subconsciously eyed the hanged man for a reaction from the corner of her eyes. She was surprised to see him jolt and freeze. It was as though an ordinary person had heard a loud and sudden clap of thunder. Digesting, acting, digesting, acting, digesting, acting, key. Alger repeated it again and again softly as though he had grasped a key concept or had succumbed to a strange curse. After a while, he raised his head and said with a hoarse voice, "Thank you, Mr. Fool. Your hint is as valuable as my life. You have enlightened me greatly. Of course, I believe I have yet to fully understand or comprehend it." Klein maintained his mysterious and unfathomable image by saying with a smile that was an advance payment. In fact, he did not truly understand the exact meaning of what was said. He was just certain that Emperor Roselle was more powerful than the typical Beyonder and stronger than the hanged man. Advance payment. Audrey looked at the hanged man's reaction and knew that the hint from before was precious. As she ruminated over it, she asked, "Mr. Fool, what do you wish for us to do?" Opposite to her, Alger said with a nod, "What matter might you wish to entrust us with?" Klein leaned back slightly as he glanced at the two of them before saying in a soft and pleasant voice, "Collect Roselle Gustav's secret diary on my behalf, even if it's just one page of it." Chapter 35. Roselle Gustav's secret diary? Emperor Roselle? Indeed, only such matters are worth the concern of a mighty figure like Mr. Fool. Audrey was first taken aback before she realized that she found it nothing surprising. Rumor had it that Emperor Roselle had once seen the blasphemy slate. It was said that the secret cards he created hid the 22 paths of the divine. This was something every high-sequence Beyonder would definitely pay attention to. Diary? That's a diary? Alger frowned slightly as he keenly noticed this tidbit. The item which Roselle Gustav had left behind had been described by Mr. Fool as a diary. How did he know? How did he determine it? Could he know the way to decipher Roselle's cryptic text? Faced with the hanged man's question and having obtained the desired effect, Klein leaned back into his chair and interlocked his hands. He answered in a relaxed manner, "Let us first view it as a diary for now." He did not deny or confirm it. Audrey had heard the children of other nobles mention the matter. However, she had never really learned much of it. With her curiosity piqued, she asked, "It said that Emperor Roselle's, well, diary was written in a cryptic language or symbols he invented." "Yes," answered Alger simply. "Some people believe that it is a unique set of symbols from mysticism. Others believe that it is a hieroglyph, but up to today, no one has found the correct way of deciphering it. At the very least, that's all I know." With that said, he turned his head at Klein in a bid to get some confirmation or show his suspicions. "They are texts that have been passed down for generations, so are no longer in their original state. According to your line of thought, how can it be deciphered?" Klein maintained his calm as he secretly gave a self-deprecating laugh. As for how to handle the symbols of mysticism, he instantly thought of a ridiculous and funny scene. Dressed in a black pointed hat and long robe, an evil mage pulls up his sleeve to reveal a symbol tattooed on his arm. It was said that this was a symbol with mysterious power left behind by Emperor Roselle. They were written in two blue, large simplified Chinese characters, "Retarded Joker." The corners of Klein's mouth curved up slowly as he found himself in a good mood. After hearing the hanged man's description, Audrey said in a stumped manner, "We can't understand the symbols or the words. Then how are we to pass the information to you, Mr. Fool? Or are we to mail it somewhere?" "This is quite an important question. I do not have the means to accept an item secretly." Klein was in no hurry to answer. He repeatedly released his thumbs from his interlocked hands before tapping them back again. Soon, he thought of a solution. "Since I can create a divine palace and table according to my wishes in here, would it be possible to project the content in the minds of others here?" They'll give it a try. At that moment, Audrey and Alger saw Mr. Fool slowly sit up amid the thick grayish fog. Miss Justice, let us give it a try. Imagine a paragraph of text and give it the emotions of writing it with urgency. Yes. Pick up the fountain pen beside you and write on the piece of paper. Before Klein finished his sentence, Audrey saw a piece of yellowish-brown goatskin parchment and a dark red fountain pen in front of her. She picked up the fountain pen both curiously and doubtfully. In accordance with the instructions, she imagined a poem Emperor Roselle once wrote, "If winter comes, can spring be far behind one?" After scrutinizing the text, she picked up her fountain pen and imbued them with the desire of projecting them out. Klein sensed the emotions, and using the fountain pen as a medium, he guided her. The moment Audrey landed her fountain pen, she saw a line appear on the goatskin parchment. "If winter comes, can spring be far behind?" "Goddess, how fascinating!" Audrey exclaimed in astonishment while feeling rueful. Following that, she looked at Klein with some fear. "Mr. Fool, can you read what I'm thinking?" "No, I'm only guiding you. I simplified the process of writing for you and made it become an imprint. If you did not wish to express it, nothing would appear." Klein placated her with a low tone. "Is that so? Then we can only memorize the symbols or the way the cryptic text looks like. Then we can present it directly as we wish?" Audrey heaved a sigh of relief as she asked in enlightenment. "Yes," Klein answered. "That's not a bad method, Miss Justice. Do not doubt your memory. After becoming a spectator, you will receive immense improvement in this aspect." Alger had watched the attempt from the side, fully coming to the realization that the fool was more powerful and mysterious than he imagined. As for his memory, he believed that the next advancement would improve it sufficiently. Regarding this, Audrey nodded in delight. "You have delighted me with this reminder, Mr. Hanged Man. Do you have any other guidance on spectators?" With that said, she looked toward the seat of honor. "Mr. Fool, I will work hard to complete your mission. I will do my best to gather more of Emperor Roselle's secret diary. I mentioned before that I'm a person who likes a fair and equal exchange. The advance payment I gave is only equivalent to 2 pages of the diary for each person. If there are more, I will give additional in return," Klein said calmly, like he was an adult who did not take advantage of children. As for where the additional payment could come from, it was naturally from the newly acquired Emperor Roselle diary pages. This formed a virtuous cycle. "You are truly a generous gentleman." Alger fell silent for a few seconds before bowing slightly with his hand by his chest. After the bow, he turned to Justice and said, "Let me emphasize once more, a spectator will forever be a spectator. I know that many spectators enjoy imagining themselves to be the protagonist or some other character. As a result, they invest a lot of feelings into it, to the point of crying, laughing, raging, and turning sorrowful because of the drama. However, that is not what a spectator should do. While faced with the various dramas of society and figures who knowingly or unknowingly act the role of particular characters, you have to maintain the attitude of being an absolute bystander. Only then can you calmly and objectively observe them. You will discover their habits, their tics from lying, or their scent of nervousness from those minute clues. You can grasp their true thoughts. Believe me, everyone is different because of their emotions. They will secrete different things and different smells. However, only a real spectator can sniff it out. Once you invest too many of your emotions, your observation will be influenced. Your sensitivity towards the emotions of others will deviate." Audrey listened attentively as her eyes brightened gradually. "It sounds really, really interesting." Klein's heart stirred when he heard that. The spectator potion's requirement, when summarized, seemed to be an absolutely objective and neutral spectator. In a particular sense, it was equivalent to acting. Acting? Was this the acting which Emperor Roselle was referring to? Then I will have to act as a seer, and from there, digest the potion bit by bit? Just as Klein was immersing himself in thought, Alger finished explaining the demands he knew of a spectator. He sighed before saying, "It seems like there's nothing else. Perhaps we can have a casual chat. We can talk about things happening around us. Perhaps it is something very normal to you, but in the ears of others, it might be a very important clue." "Sure," Klein snapped back and nodded slightly. He was already planning to attempt to act as a seer. After all, it did not seem like there were any negative effects from doing so. "Then shall we begin with you, Mr. Hanged Man?" Audrey agreed in excitement. Alger thought for a moment before saying, "The infamous pirate who calls himself Lieutenant General Deweyville has begun his voyage to explore the eastern end of the Sonia Sea again." "Oh? The owner of the Black Tulip?" returned Audrey with a question after some thought. "Yes," Alger replied with a nod. "I don't even know who that is." Klein listened silently while he pondered over the news he planned on sharing. It had to be something that did not expose him while also allowing him to gain feedback. Soon, he decided, he maintained his unfathomable image as the fool and caressed the side of the bronze table with his fingers. "According to what I know, the secret order has lost an Antigonus family notebook. This news was not only known by the Nighthawks from Tinjin City, the Secret Order as well as Beyonders with close ties with them similarly knew an Antigonus family notebook? Alger repeated before smiling with a shake of his head. I'm really curious as to what reaction the Church of the Evernight Goddess will have if they learn of it. Why would he mention the Church of the Evernight Goddess? Klein acutely sensed a problem, but it was not appropriate for him to ask. That would shatter his image as the mysterious and profound fool at that moment. Audrey asked out of curiosity, why are you curious? What sort of special reaction would the Goddess Church have? Alger smiled and said, the Antigonus family was destroyed by the Church of the Evernight Goddess. I'm not really sure if it happened at the end of the fourth epoch or the early stages of the present epoch. Klein's pupils constricted as a chill suddenly swept through him. From the looks of it, the value the Nighthawks have placed on this Antigonus notebook far exceeds my imagination. The reason why they nominated me as a Beyonder having some contribution and to prevent danger to me are likely negligible reasons that they wish for me to raise my spiritual sensitivity to aid them in finding the notebook. This was not kept from me by Captain, he had mentioned it, but I just didn't pay much attention to it. After hearing the hanged man's explanation, Audrey said with deep interest, I never imagined that such a thing would happen. All right, my turn. Let me think of what I have to share. She cocked her head and held her head up with her hand before chuckling. Yesterday, my etiquette teacher taught me how to faint elegantly without any faux pas. It's a practical skill used at social events to avoid awkward situations or nasty guys. Heh, I was just organizing my thoughts. What I really wanted to say is that ever since the failure of the battle on Balam's eastern shore, the king, premier, and gentlemen are under immense stress. They eagerly wish to change.